Welcome to Inside Outside Innovation, episode 35. This is another interview we recorded live at the Lean Startup Week 2016. Josh sat down with Jitendra Kavathekar, the managing director of Accenture Open Innovation. In their conversation, Jitendra really laid out why open innovation is important and how it's effective, and he pointed out specific things in corporations that can inhibit the partnerships with startups that are so crucial for the corporation's survival. He also emphasized the importance of local ecosystems for open innovation as it fits into a global context. Hi there, everyone. I'm Vicky, producer of Inside Outside Innovation, the podcast that brings you the latest insights from people who know the most about building lean businesses, innovating within corporations, and disrupting entire industries with passion and precision. Connect with our team on Twitter at the IO Podcast or leave us a review on iTunes. Now, let's get started.
Jitendra, what does open innovation mean? Just getting started out there, we have a lot of corporate innovators who are really interested in figuring out how to partner with startups or institutions or whatnot, but just to give everybody a level set, what is open innovation to you?
Yeah, I mean, of course, Henry Chesbrough made the term very famous, and, you know, of course, the industry's riffed on open innovation as a theme. We're not too far off from that. Open innovation for us is our way of bringing innovation from anywhere in the world, not just within our four walls, but anywhere in the world, to our clients to drive our client transformations and our client journeys. We're here to serve our clients. Increasingly, the technology waves that are hitting us are driving those changes, and so we're looking at innovations outside of Accenture in the form of startups, universities, and others to drive those changes.
So in the past, many corporations felt it was us versus startups, right? Yeah. How has that continued to evolve, and why is it becoming even more and more popular and probably even more and more valuable to consider collaboration with startups?
Yeah, I think there's a realization, I think there's a humbling of the rate at which the technologies are hitting us. And I think you look at skill sets that are needed to develop very, very quickly around, let's say, machine learning. It's a popular topic right now, right? How many machine learning experts do you have within your company? Probably not that many, for most companies out there. Yet there are great startups that are coming out there that are focused on it. So skill sets, I think culture and inertia of culture is top of mind for a lot of companies. And I think you just look at the new wave of employees that are coming in and the enthusiasm and the receptivity of looking at what the startup world is doing. You just look at it from a macro perspective, the amount of money that's going into funding startups, so the supply of innovation is growing rapidly. It's not deniable. So yeah, I think a lot of these things are adding to it. I think also you're seeing, the Ubers and the Airbnb examples that get thrown around a lot in terms of disrupting business models for the incumbents. Is jarred a lot of companies in all of the industries to say, hey, what's the Uber of our industry and what should we do about it? But it loosens everybody up into opening up and saying, yeah, no, I think we need to figure out how to evolve and change. And so I think there's just a lot of change going on in the market, and I think everybody's getting into it, so everybody's competitive with each other.
Absolutely. You just hit on something there of thinking about what the corporation can bring to the relationship, right? They've got the capital many times. They've got the channel. They've got clients. Maybe there is some proprietary information that they can bring to the table. Everybody thinks this should be a match made in heaven, right? Because I can match it with those people who can move faster than I can. Maybe they have talent and passion, et cetera. But there are certain things I think that get in the way from this being always the match made in heaven. What are some of the things that you see, especially from the client side, from the corporate side, that impede and at the very beginning don't always make this perfect match?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things, right? I think a lot of times we get in our own way, just in terms of our own internal processes, our own governance models, our own kind of protective measures to make sure that we're not, even signing an NDA sometimes takes a few days to get the right people to look at it, to sign it, et cetera. Just to give you a small example, some sort of partnership agreement could take months. It could take a while to get through. So there's those normal kind of internal mechanisms that get in the way. I think also if you look at the kind of not invented here type of syndrome that's out there and still fairly prevalent, I think it's a threat sometimes to see that you're going to partner with somebody who you already have a team that can do this, right? And I think that threat really should be looked at as an opportunity.
Sure.
Because the opportunity, of course, is that you're not trying to do the foundational innovation. What we really should be doing as corporates is to really understand what our end users, end consumers, end partners really need. What is the real value that we're providing? And oftentimes we're able to see that we can add a layer of innovation on top of that startup's capabilities to wrap it in a way that makes sense for our consumer base, right? And at the end of the day, our corporate clients own their consumers. That's what they want to own. They want to continue owning that. They want to have a strong brand. They want to have strong technology and processes. So do that, right? But you don't have to build. You don't have to build the wheel to get a car. You can get the wheels. You can start building other aspects of the car that's really going to create that stronger solution for you.
So thinking about what ends up getting built, or even where these partnerships get sought, there's different phases along the innovation spectrum, right? I've got a lot of stuff close to the core that I'm working on, all the way out to adjacent or transformational things and new businesses that haven't even been invented yet. Yeah. Where does open innovation work best?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think classically what you see with open innovation is a lot of the edges, kind of thing. It's kind of in the innovation centers. How can you bring outside innovation into the innovation centers to kind of have a more vibrant innovation agenda for the company? So it's a little bit more on the future looking things. But honestly, what I'd say is, and I was just in Brazil last week, and we were talking to a number of clients there, everything from insurance companies to agri-tech to other companies, banks. And, we just talked about why wouldn't we apply capable, startups and their innovations and their technologies to the most challenging problems that you have, the most critical problems that
regardless of where they are on the spectrum.
Regardless of where they are on the spectrum. Right? So, I mean, of course, there is a qualifying of the partnership, right? You have to find quote-unquote startups that are starting to not look like startups anymore because they got a lot of funding, they got a nice building, they got 200 employees, and you're getting to that stage, right? But you got to get those companies that I think are ready to scale, that are built to scale, that are already scaling. But once you kind of de-risked that relationship and you've got these companies that are going to be around for a while, why not apply them to the hardest problems that you have? And why not apply that to the heart of the scariest part of what you think should change, but you're losing sleep over how to change it, and you're going through all the machinations of the culture shift, and you have the right person running it, all that. Why not go after those types of problems? And of course, there's risk involved. But frankly, that's where Accenture comes in. We've done the large transformations with our clients. That's what we do every day, right? And so we feel that we think we can add value in the relationship between the startup, the corporate, where we're able to go after those hard problems, like we've always done. But embedded in what we're providing are these startups' technologies that we can do that with. So I think right now, to answer your question, I think right now it's on the edges. I think a lot of this is experimental and see where it goes. But more and more, we're trying to coach our clients into saying, let's get some courage, let's go after it.
Could you tell us a little bit more about how you facilitate that bridge making?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of things that we do. We have 7 locations around the world now with Open Innovation. So, we just launched Tel Aviv, for example, for our cybersecurity, but we have in London and Paris and India, Brazil, United States, and we're growing more and more this year. We have over 5,000 companies now that we've met and have in our database, and of that we have a few hundred that are really key startups that we vetted that we think have a real good impact potential for our clients. So that's on the supply side, but I really want to talk about the demand side. The demand side is really the interesting part for us, which is what does that journey look like for a client of ours, for a corporate, to really zone in on where they can transform a particular business, right? We're working with, so we have something called Open Innovation as a Service. And the idea is it's your typical kind of 3-step kind of program where we start off with not only discovering the innovations and startups out there, not only doing the screening, but also discovering the problems to solve. So the first phase is really defining the problem, defining proof of concepts that we could be funding, we could be taking to market. And as we go through these 3 phases, we're building those proof of concepts, we're piloting those proof of concepts, and then ultimately we're going to scale it and make it real. And that Open Innovation Service is really interesting because, we had a large agri-bank, bank that supports agriculture. And, the CTO of the bank asked us to look at, let's apply open innovation as a service to agri-banking of the future. An agri-bank of the future is a world where farmers are living in an IoT world. And so when you have this IoT world, you can do a lot of things in terms of measuring the health of the soil. You can measure the moisture levels. You can measure, there's more and more startups looking at climate changes and forecasting climate, which is a really hard problem, but there are a lot of companies doing that. You have, in this part of the world, there's severe drought conditions, et cetera. So it's an important area. And you have technologies like sensors in the ground. You have drones with sensors. You have satellite imagery like Planet Labs and others. You have farm automation. You have a lot of things happening in agri-tech right now. But how do you translate that into what the bank should do? And so we went through this process. We identified 13 problem areas that the bankers, we're not talking about technologists, we're talking about the actual bankers, once they understood where the world is going. These are problems that we could be starting to address today over the next 2-3 years to be ready for this IoT world. And of that, we just pick a few of those problems and start to build proof of concepts with them. When we start to build those proof of concepts, whether it is, how do you value a new plot of land, when somebody's trying to buy it with a mortgage, what's the mortgage rate that you're going to apply? Or how do you determine whether that farmer is managing their water effectively in a drought condition? So then if it's a risky client or not risky client, right? You want to price your risk. That's what banks do. And so we went through that process. We came up with the POCs, and then we realized pretty quickly that there's so much data that's going to be coming to the bank eventually when you have all these sensors and everything in the ground, that those sensors and that data needs to really be digested in some sort of risk model. That today the risk model is really just Excel spreadsheets. It's in Excel and it's in people's heads. Tomorrow's world, there has to be a digital infrastructure to ingest all that data to come up with the risk models. Yep. That's core to that bank. That is the core of the bank, right? So it's not just the edges in terms of like, oh wow, you can kind of detect some climate change in a certain part of summer or whatever. It's not just that. It's not just hey, we can detect moisture levels. What does that mean? It really gets to the core of digitizing their credit risk scoring ability, and that is the core of that bank in this new world where IoT is going to play a role. That is where open innovation comes in, because we can sit here and talk about the way it should work, or we can actually get in there and experiment with startups that are doing these things. And that's what we did, and we're really excited about that project.
That's a phenomenal example. It reminds me of that credit union up in New York City that went under because of the taxi cab medallion lending, right? Sometimes you have no idea which ripple is going to potentially take you out, and so many times you do need a good outsider coming in to help you understand what's going, and not then just take that information and pray that something good's going to happen. But how can you choose a few areas and then start, just like we're learning here, to apply lean startup or other areas to do rapid experimentation and testing to figure out where you can de-risk it?
Rapid experimentation in that case was rapid learning. If we didn't experiment, we would have had some theoretical understanding of where the world might be going. It'd just be stuck in some PowerPoint slides that we could spend a day and a half just doing some sort of workshop and walking people through some PowerPoint slides and walk away, and hopefully we did some value. No, in this case, we actually started to experiment, and those experiments, which are technology experiments, they're proof of concept developments. We're going to take those out in the field, but as we're doing that, we're uncovering the next wave of problems.
Sure.
It's not the next wave of technology, it's the next wave of problems. It's get to the core part of that business. And that client journey, this open innovation as a service, I'm really excited about, because that's really where I think there's kind of a missing link. This whole innovation world that we're in, and this experimentation and open innovation and all the innovation centers, it all started with people just curious of what's out there, right? You see a lot of companies here in the Valley that have their outposts. And,
sure.
They'll set up partnership with accelerators. They'll set up a corporate venture fund. You got to be in the game. The board of directors is very happy that they're doing that. The CEO is happy they're doing it. It's a good marketing thing. The employees want to see that they're doing that, and it's great. It's a great foundational step, and you got to be in the game. It's a full contact sport, as we say. But really, to evolve from that or mature from that is really focus on the biggest problems that you have. Big problems, small problems, but don't be scared of the big problems, and start to apply these principles to those hard problems, and be surprised what you come out of with that.
So one of the things that we've seen, at least in the Midwest sometimes, is corporations, especially mid-market, who are thinking about they want to do this, they want to engage with startups. It seems like they go a couple of different paths first off, right? They find the accelerator that's closest to them, or something to try to invest in or mentor at. Or they start to hold reverse pitch competitions or hackathons or other things. They get really, really, really early stage stuff, right? You'd mentioned before, though, a lot of things you look at might be Series A or probably Series B at that stage. Is there a place for these really early dipping the toe in, or is it more theatrics?
Yeah, there certainly is a place. I mean, I think you owe it to your employees to be in the game. Because I think everybody's caught the bug, and you don't have to be a millennial just to feel the bug. I feel it, and I'm not a millennial. So I think you owe it to your culture. You owe it to the evolution of your company's culture. You owe it to be able to recruit new people in. I think you owe it to your own brand to be involved in these things, and those things are important. I mean, you can't minimize those things. And I think you have to kind of acclimate the culture to these great ideas. I mean, there's so much enthusiasm everybody has when they show up at an accelerator, right? I mean, I don't care if you're coming from a corporate or a startup, you got the bug, right? And I think you got to have that bug. And I think so I think there's a place for that, and I think you should experiment with that. I think you have to moderate your risk on that. So I think, those are environments, those earlier stage companies, the fact of the matter is that most of these companies are going to die. And it's not because they're bad. It's not. I mean, some of them might not be really that good, but it's not really about good or bad. It's really hard to get these companies to grow and get to the next stage.
Sure.
And venture capital is not the only way to do it. A lot of parts of the world don't rely on venture capital, and they create great businesses, and they're great, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we talk about the Silicon Valley side of the equation, venture capital is a big thing, and I think that is a key marker for reducing risk. Doesn't mean you're going to be ultimately successful, but at least you've reduced the risk and you can start to engage. So I think you have to kind of have a dual speed about these things. I think you have to engage with the local economies and local accelerators. We see this around the world, all the countries I mentioned. There's so much pride in every country where every kind of country lead for Accenture is going to raise their hand and say, we've got startups too. We've got a vibrant startup ecosystem.
Sure.
And absolutely, these are tremendously vibrant. And there's a lot of local to local success stories, sometimes small, sometimes big, but you can't ignore that. So that has to continue. But don't ignore the kind of outside-in kind of angle as well, right? So in the Midwest, right? I mean, the fact that New York is on one end of the world or the United States and Silicon Valley is on the other end, there's some great innovations that could be directly relevant to you. And if you're a bank, there's some great startups in our FinTech Innovation Lab in New York. There's some great startups that we've groomed and we've went through. And of course in Silicon Valley. The position that we're trying to play with Accenture is to be that bridge maker. So no matter where the innovation is coming from in the world, we should be able to serve our clients everywhere. Mm-hmm. That's really what we're trying to do, because I think this is not a geo-specific or a local play. Even though you have to play locally, it's not your only play. You got to look at the broader ecosystem.
I think that's a great point. All right.
So,
if people want to learn more about Accenture Open Innovation or yourself, where can we direct them to?
Yeah, I mean, go to our website. We have a link to Open Innovation there. So it's www.accenture.com.
Well, I appreciate it, Jitendra.
Great. I really much enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me.
That wraps up another episode of Inside Outside Innovation. Big thanks to Jitendra for taking time out of the conference to talk with us. We would love to connect with you through Twitter at the IO Podcast or on our website, insideoutside.io. If you've got a topic or area you'd like us to dig into, let us know, because we'd love to share our insights and invite other experts like Jitendra onto the show so that they can share theirs. Until next time, go out and innovate.